There is something happening inside you that you may not have fully noticed. You scroll through your phone and see someone living a life that looks brighter than yours. Instantly, without permission, something inside you sinks. A friend shares good news about their career, their relationship, their growth. And before you can feel happy for them, a quiet weight presses down on your chest. You tell yourself to stop. You remind yourself that everyone has their own path. You know comparison is meaningless. You have read the quotes. You have heard the advice. And still it continues. This is not a character flaw. This is not jealousy in the way you were taught to understand jealousy. What is happening inside you is a very specific mental pattern, a loop your mind has been running for years, possibly since childhood. And until you understand exactly how this loop operates, no amount of willpower, no amount of positive thinking will be able to stop it. Today I want to explain to you why this happens, not to comfort you, not to tell you that you are already wonderful, but to show you clearly and specifically what is actually occurring inside your mind when comparison takes over, and what begins to shift when you finally see it. Let me explain what comparison actually is at a psychological level. When you compare yourself to another person, your mind is not simply observing a difference. It is doing something more complex. It is measuring your worth against an external reference point and then making a judgment about your position on an invisible ladder. This ladder does not exist, but your mind believes it does. The reason your mind does this is because at some point in your life, you were taught that your value is not fixed. You were taught, not through words but through experiences, that love, approval, safety, and belonging are given in proportion to how you measure up. Think carefully about this. If you grew up in an environment where praise came mostly after achievement, your mind learned something. I am valued when I do well relative to others. If you were compared to siblings, cousins, classmates, if you were told directly or indirectly that someone else was smarter, more disciplined, more successful, your mind absorbed a belief. My position matters. My ranking is tied to my safety. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. Your brain, when it was still forming, was looking for patterns to survive. And it found one. I must keep checking where I stand. So now, even as an adult, even when no one is grading you, even when no one is watching, your mind continues to check. It checks compulsively. It checks through social media, through conversations, through observation of how others live. And every time it finds someone who appears to be ahead, it triggers an alarm. You are falling behind. You are not enough. You must do more. This is the mechanism. This is what is happening. If this pattern sounds familiar, if you recognize this loop operating in your own mind, leave a simple comment below. I see this. Not as a confession, not as a cry for help, simply as an acknowledgement to yourself that you are beginning to observe what has been running in the background for years. My beloved, if you want to support this channel, then buy me a coffee from the link given below. Now you might say, I already know I compare myself. I have known this for a long time. Why doesn't knowing stop it? This is an important question. The reason awareness does not immediately stop comparison is because there are two levels of knowing. The first level is intellectual understanding. You can read a quote that says, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and your mind agrees. Yes, that makes sense, but nothing changes. The second level is experiential recognition. This is when you catch the comparison happening in real time, when you notice the exact moment your chest tightens, when you observe the thought forming before it fully grips you, when you see the pattern as it operates instead of only recognizing it hours later. Most people remain at the first level. They understand the concept but never truly observe the mechanism as it runs. Let me give you an example. Suppose you see a post from someone who just achieved something you wanted. Within 1 or 2 seconds, before your conscious mind has time to intervene, the following happens. Your eyes take in the image. Your brain compares their situation to your own. A conclusion is made. They have what I do not. An emotional signal is triggered. Inadequacy, envy, or deflation. Your mind then begins to justify, explain, or push away the feeling. This entire sequence takes less than 5 seconds. By the time you notice anything, you are already in the aftermath. The low mood, the irritability, the urge to distract yourself. The shift does not come from telling yourself to stop comparing. The shift comes from slowing down enough to see step 2 and step 3 as they occur. When you observe the comparison before the emotion takes over, something changes. The pattern loses a fraction of its power. Not because you fought it, but because you saw it. This is why I say the solution is not resistance. The solution is observation. Now let me explain something deeper. When you compare yourself to someone, you are comparing yourself to an image, a story your mind is constructing about who that person is and what their life contains. You are not comparing yourself to a real person. You are comparing yourself to a projection. Think about this clearly. When you see someone's achievement, you see a single frame of their life. You do not see the years of struggle that came before. You do not see the doubts they carry privately. You do not see the areas of their life where they feel just as inadequate as you feel in yours. But your mind is not interested in accuracy. Your mind is interested in quick judgments, because quick judgments feel efficient. So it takes a fragment of information and builds a complete story. This person has figured it out. This person is ahead. This person has what you should have by now. And then it does something even more damaging. It compares that inflated image of them to a deflated image of yourself. It compares their highlight to your behind the scenes, their single visible success to your full catalog of private failures. This is not a fair comparison. It is not even a real comparison. It is a rigged equation designed to make you feel inadequate. And the reason your mind does this is because it is still operating from the old belief. If I feel bad enough, I will try harder. If I criticize myself enough, I will improve. But this is a misunderstanding. Chronic self-criticism does not produce growth. It produces exhaustion, anxiety, and paralysis. The mind believes it is motivating you. In reality, it is draining you. Let me now show you how this pattern shows up in places you may not have recognized. In work, you receive positive feedback on a project, but instead of feeling satisfied, your mind immediately scans for who is doing better. The praise is momentarily received, then discarded. What remains is the lingering sense that you are still not where you should be. You work harder, not from inspiration, but from fear of falling behind. In relationships, you meet someone who seems more confident, more articulate, more at ease in their body. Instead of appreciating them, your mind uses them as evidence against you. Why am I not like that? What is wrong with me? Relationships become mirrors that reflect everything you think you lack. In rest, you take a break, and within minutes, guilt arrives. Someone out there is working right now. Someone out there is making progress. How can you justify stillness when others are moving forward? Rest becomes something you must earn, and the earning never ends. In self-talk, the voice in your head speaks to you the way a harsh critic would speak to an underperforming employee. It does not say you are learning. It says you should be further by now. And because this voice has been present for so long, you have mistaken it for truth. You have forgotten that it is simply a program running on outdated beliefs. If any of this describes your experience, you are not broken. You are simply operating with a mental pattern that was installed long before you had the ability to question it. Now I want to explain what actually shifts when this understanding deepens. Many people believe that the goal is to stop comparing entirely. They think the solution is to eliminate the pattern from the mind. But this is not realistic. Comparison is a natural function of human cognition. The brain is designed to notice differences. You cannot remove this function. What can change is your relationship to the comparison. When you clearly understand that comparison is a conditioned response, when you see that it is based on incomplete information, distorted images, and outdated beliefs about worthiness, something loosens. The comparison still arises, but it no longer controls you. It becomes something you observe rather than something you obey. Here is what this looks like in practice. You see someone's achievement. The familiar tightening begins. But this time you notice it. You say to yourself silently, here is the comparison. Here is the contraction. Here is the old program trying to measure my worth. You do not fight it. You do not push it away. You simply name it. You observe it. And then something small but significant happens. You create space between the trigger and your response. In that space, you can choose. You can choose to believe the comparison, or you can choose to see it as a mechanical reaction that does not reflect reality. This is not the same as pretending the comparison did not happen. This is not toxic positivity. This is clarity. This is seeing the pattern without being controlled by it. Over time, as this practice deepens, the comparisons begin to lose their weight. They still arise, but they pass through you more quickly. They no longer define your day or dictate your mood. You become less reactive, not because you suppressed the reaction, but because you understood it. There is one more thing I want to clarify. Underneath all comparison is a single unexamined belief. My worth is variable. It can go up, it can go down. It depends on what I do and how I measure against others. This belief is the foundation on which the entire pattern rests. But ask yourself, is this actually true? If you achieve something great tomorrow, does your fundamental worth as a person increase? If you fail publicly, does it decrease? If someone else succeeds, does that take something away from you? The answer, when you think clearly, is no. Worth is not a resource that gets divided. Worth is not a competition. Worth is not a ladder. And yet, the mind continues to treat it as such, because the mind was trained to do so. The invitation here is not to repeat affirmations about being enough. Affirmations often do not reach the places where the false belief lives. The invitation is to question the belief itself, to see that the idea of variable worth is a mental construct, not a fact of reality. When you begin to see this, not just intellectually but experientially, the need to compare naturally decreases, not because you forced it, but because the foundation on which comparison rested has been questioned, and what is questioned deeply begins to lose its power. I will not give you a list of steps to follow. That is not how the mind transforms. But I will offer you something practical to notice. Over the next few days, pay attention to the moment comparison arises. Do not wait until you are already feeling bad. Try to catch it earlier, at the moment the comparison forms. Notice what triggered it. Was it something you saw, something you heard, something you remembered? Notice what story your mind is telling. What are you making this mean about yourself? Notice the feeling in your body. Is there tightness, sinking, contraction? And then simply observe. Do not analyze excessively. Do not try to fix anything. Just watch. Let the observation be enough. What you will find is that the more you observe without reacting, the less power the pattern holds. Not because you fought it, but because you refuse to let it operate unconsciously. This is not a technique. This is the practice of awareness. And it is more effective than any strategy for stopping comparison, because it does not create internal resistance. It creates internal clarity. Let me leave you with what I want you to carry from this. Comparison is not a sign of weakness or failure. It is a learned response, a program your mind runs based on early conditioning about how worth is measured. This program uses incomplete information to construct distorted images of others and then compares you unfavorably to those images. It creates a false sense that you are falling behind in a race that does not actually exist. The solution is not to suppress comparison. The solution is to see it clearly, to notice the moment it arises, to observe the mechanics without believing the conclusions. As your awareness of this pattern deepens, the pattern loses its grip, not because you fought it, but because you stopped obeying it blindly. You stop treating the voice of comparison as if it were the voice of truth. You do not need to become someone else to be at peace. You do not need to outrun anyone to be worthy. These are beliefs your mind was taught to hold. They are not facts. They are not you. Clarity is not about feeling good in every moment. It is about seeing accurately. And when you see the comparison pattern accurately, when you understand its origins, its mechanics, and its distortions, you are no longer controlled by it. This is not the end of the journey, but it is a meaningful beginning.